the border area between New York and Connecticut in the United States. Pippa started her day as exquisitely as ever. That evening, there was an important banquet, marking the first day she and her husband Herb moved into the Marigold retirement community. Pippa stood quietly on one side of the kitchen, watching the seated guests chatting and laughing. She could only stand there, smiling faintly, like a delicate doll, enhancing the atmosphere with her beauty. Ryder Sam was the first to rise. He had been a close friend of Herb for over 30 years. As a publisher, Herb had often supported Sam, for which Sam was grateful. Herb ultimately accepted Sam's suggestion to move from downtown New York City to this place, which greatly pleased Sam. Sam praised Pippa for her generosity and grace, noting that she had maintained a mysterious and elegant demeanor for 25 years. Faced with such praise, Pippa felt both delighted and awkward. This was also the first time she truly felt part of the joyful and harmonious gathering that evening. Although Herb was now quite old, he remained the central figure of the banquet. He could engage in discussions about poetry with Sam's wife, while also comfortably stating that he had completed all his professional missions and should now enjoy life and live out his years. Pippa advised her son Ben to discourage Sam from continuing to inquire about the reasons for their move here. But Ben was not worried about his father. Rather, he believed his mother's words and actions were clearly abnormal. Sure enough, just after Pippa expressed her fondness for this place, she turned to her son to complain that there must be deceased people here. Ben thought his mother's words were inappropriate, often speaking without thinking and being inconsistent in her expressions. Pippa also questioned herself internally about when this state of being had begun. She was already tired of her capricious self and longed for someone who could truly understand her inner world. Looking at the caramel slowly melting in the flames, the word sweet quietly surfaced in Pippa's mind. All stories must be traced back to the beginning. Pippa's birth was quite dramatic. Her mother, Suki, experienced a late delivery, and when Pippa was born, she was covered in fine hair, which startled Suki and caused her to leave. There were already 4 older brothers in the family, making Pippa the second female member. Suki was worried about this. The unusual condition of the infant reminded her of a friend's previous warning. The friend had warned that if she continued to abuse prohibited substances, the fetus would surely have health problems. And the abuse of prohibited substances was Suki's secret that she had hidden for many years. Fortunately, after the fine hair fell away, young Pippa was beautiful and lively. Suki secretly breathed a sigh of relief and began to obsess over her daughter's looks. Suki would dress Pippa up, transforming her into various stars and princesses. Kat seemed to have endless energy, viewing Pippa as her greatest achievement. A sharp whistle interrupted Pippa's memories. Herb actually regretted moving here. The idle state in the suburbs felt to him like waiting for old age to come. No matter what emotions Herb expressed, Pippa always responded positively, echoing with an optimistic attitude. This kind of compliance and forbearance lasted for over 20 years for Pippa, gradually leading to feelings of weariness and fatigue. At nearly 50, Pippa's charm had faded. Every morning she woke up with aches in her body. However, the chaos in the kitchen shocked Pippa greatly, as the scene looked as if a burglar had broken in, with various foods scattered everywhere. After hearing his wife's account, Herb suddenly became sensitive and suspicious, subjectively assuming that his wife was implying he was becoming old and senile. At this moment, their daughter Grace arrived late. Grace, a photojournalist, had been working away from home for a long time, and this day was supposed to be a family reunion. But the father and daughter continued discussing her new work, and Grace didn't even give her mother a hug. Pippa sat still, feeling both anticipation and embarrassment. Until her husband handed her their daughter's work, Pippa asked with concern whether the situation in Baghdad was dangerous. The mischievous Ben took a seat and immediately revealed the fact that his sister had been hiding. The profession of a war correspondent is extremely dangerous, often facing bomb attacks. Herb then talked about his recently discovered work, claiming it was the ideal summer reading for the wealthy class. Ben was about to become a practicing lawyer, enjoying his last moments on campus. The conversation flowed among everyone, while Pippa found it hard to interject. The daughter admired her father, the son emulated his father, and Pippa remained merely the most perfect embellishment in the scene, the most exquisite doll, needing only to smile silently without words. In her childhood, Pippa always harbored doubts. Her mother took thyroid medication daily, but remained energetic, shining like a star and always in the spotlight. At that time, Pippa loved her mother deeply, believing her to be flawless. It wasn't until later that she gradually noticed her mother's abnormal mental state. Childhood Pippa feared the disappearance of her perfect mother, feeling both anger and anxiety about it. Pippa even blamed her mother's insomnia, silence, and frequent tears on herself. Childhood. Pippa suddenly realized that her mother could easily sway her emotions, controlling all her joys and sorrows. One morning, Mrs. Dot, a neighbor, came to visit. Another old neighbor had passed away. Dot came to consult Pippa about parenting issues. Dot had adopted her son Chris years ago, and now, at 35, Chris not only had a broken marriage, but had fallen so low that he lived in his car. Dot hoped her son would move in with her, but Chris was self-centered, like an immature child. Therefore, Dot sought advice from her peer Pippa on how to deal with such a child. However, Pippa did not listen seriously to Dot's troubles, responding with some superficial, comforting words. The male members of the household held a different view. Herb believed that Chris's state was that of a typical life failure. Herb could both comfort younger subordinates and prepare new office spaces, still managing to work 3 hours a day. Ben repeatedly reminded his father that he had suffered 3 heart attacks, his blood pressure was high, and he should avoid emotional distress and overexertion. Such words made Herb extremely irritated. He could self-deprecate about aging, yet he sensitively installed surveillance equipment due to socks left in the refrigerator. Pippa had known Herb for 25 years, and in her eyes, her husband's appearance had not changed, embodying both the wear of time and mature charm. Upon learning of Chris's visit, Pippa took the initiative to bring gifts to Dot's home. Dot's husband hoped Pippa would mediate, as the family planned to celebrate Chris, but Chris deliberately avoided meeting. At the moment the door opened, Pippa was still shocked by Chris's appearance. His muscular chest was adorned with large religious tattoos, and beneath his black hair, his handsome face exuded determination and defiance. Chris had a unique personality, and, faced with his mother's nagging, turned and left directly. Dot couldn't help but sigh. Her son was obedient and sensible as a child, but now he seemed like a different person. To truly understand a family member may require a long time. After Pippa became an adult, she discovered her mother's secret. Her brother informed Pippa that their mother had been taking stimulants for a long time. Their father and brothers had actually known for a while, but pretended not to, simply because their father, as a pastor, could not allow such scandals in the family. Pippa intended to confront her mother, but her mother flatly denied it, and after a few words, became emotional and lost control. From then on, Pippa believed her mother's life was extremely difficult. She hoped her mother could quit drugs and return to a normal life. Her mother agreed to try, but after a week of persistence, symptoms of daze, irritability, and strange behavior appeared. No one in the family paid attention to the housewife trying to change. They each conversed, treating her as if she were air. This dinner atmosphere continued for a whole year. Eventually, her mother gave up on quitting and her drug intake increased. The oppressive atmosphere completely crushed Pippa. She consumed her mother's drugs and experienced the sensory thrill for the first time. Pippa desperately wished her mother could awaken, even if it required extreme measures. But her mother only reminded her not to reveal this to their father. This statement shocked Pippa. Her mother had no place for her in her heart. In an instant, the mother and daughter transformed all warmth into sharp verbal attacks. Pippa finally understood that she could not save her mother, and her mother had never made changes for her. Even if it involved her daughter, she was unwilling to stop using drugs. From then on, Pippa was utterly desperate about her mother and family. On that spring night, Pippa chose to run away from home. The house was once again in disarray. Pippa checked her husband's surveillance footage, and the content horrified her. All the chaotic scenes were caused by her own hands. Pippa could not understand her actions and had no memory of them. She hurriedly woke Herb and told him the truth. Herb still calmly embraced his wife, using light words to alleviate her fear, saying it was merely a case of sleepwalking. Scattered cigarette butts in the car made Pippa, who had quit smoking for years, realize that the situation was not simple. Little did she expect that the convenience store cashier was the rebellious Chris. Pippa sensed that Chris could see through her heart, and she had to keep finding topics to mask her panic, a feeling of unease that hadn't appeared in years. For 25 years, her life had only included the loquacious Sam and the obscurely literary Herb. And Sam's wife, Sandra, often spoke astonishingly, revealing her ignorance and dullness. At this moment, Pippa rarely chose to avoid, and after many years, smoked again. Pippa's mind went blank as she let the smoke pull her into past memories. After leaving home, young Pippa sought refuge with Aunt Teresa. Teresa kindly took her in, and besides Teresa, there was her partner, the writer Kat. Teresa persuaded Pippa to meet her parents, to face the issues rather than escape. But Pippa firmly chose to live independently away from home. Suki blamed all the faults on Pippa, claiming that if it weren't for Pippa's interference, she wouldn't have tried to quit and wouldn't have increased her dosage. Suki sometimes felt guilty, sometimes accused, and a tear fell, leaving Pippa utterly heartbroken. Her mother was like an ever-falling abyss. She had to escape, and only by continuously running could she gain freedom and breathe easily. Returning indoors, Sandra confided her own struggles to Pippa. She had been married to Sam for 4 years, long accommodating her husband, and was already physically and mentally exhausted. Pippa, with her female intuition, suspected that Sandra might be having an affair. But Herb offered a more mature and rational judgment, believing that Sandra intended to provoke a misunderstanding with Sam through someone else's words to gain more attention. Herb stated that this was a survival strategy for married women to maintain emotional connections, a common phenomenon. Herb was always wise and cultured. Pippa remembered her husband's words and even carefully arranged a sophisticated classical office for him, equipped with a private bathroom. But Herb disliked the medicine cabinet prepared by his wife, feeling that she constantly reminded him of his aging. A loud noise suddenly came, and Pippa hurried to check. It turned out that Chris had forcibly stopped all vehicles to rescue a puppy by the roadside. The gentle-spoken Chris left a deep imprint in Pippa's heart, and the shock brought by that kindness lingered for a long time. Sandra looked at Pippa, unable to help but lament her beauty and happiness, tears welling up in her words. Since Herb and Sam were old friends, Pippa and Sandra naturally became close friends. In desperation, Pippa shared her marriage insights with Sandra. She loved Herb deeply, but marriage inevitably involved compromises, and love was hard to maintain over decades of companionship. As long as one approached the other in a way that suited their preferences, it could win a man's heart. These words awakened Sandra, while also planting hidden dangers. On a sunny day, Pippa, dressed in pajamas, smoked alone. An endless blue ribbon stretches into the distant woods, where a majestic lion gradually transforms into an ugly potato. Yet joy still rises in her heart, simply because a handsome man is waiting for her arrival with a handful of cigarettes. This feeling is sweet and comfortable. Chris does not notice Pippa's abnormality. He lightly touches the dazed Pippa, causing her to suddenly awaken. Pippa falls into panic, fearful of not knowing where she is or what actions she has taken. Chris kindly offers to take Pippa home, and Pippa pleads with him not to tell anyone about this matter. Chris agrees to keep it as secret as possible. Pippa initially thought it was just a joke, but she finds that Chris keeps his promise, as straightforward and pure as a child. Quietly returning home, Pippa intends to wake her husband, but upon seeing the sleeping Herb, she feels a sense of hesitation. Herb's words upon waking cruelly shatter the calm. Pippa can only immerse herself in memories once again. Teresa's home was once Pippa's refuge, comfortable and relaxed. But gradually, Kat began to appear dangerous and alluring in Pippa's eyes. Kat's candid conversations with friends opened a whole new world of understanding for Pippa. Kat is writing a novel and hopes to take photos to create characters that embody wildness and represent female rebellion. The increasingly intimate gestures and hurried breaths cause Pippa to gradually sink deeper. She willingly becomes a puppet once more, enjoying the feeling of being noticed. Until 2 weeks later, Teresa discovers this matter. Herb notices something unusual about his wife's state. Beyond sleepwalking, she seems to have gained some vitality. Only Pippa knows that sleepwalking brings her a lot of trouble. She forgets her car at the convenience store and has to hurriedly contact Chris, asking him for a ride. To ease the awkwardness, Pippa takes the initiative to ask Chris about his past experiences. Chris speaks frankly, stating that he once aspired to be a pastor, and after that dream was shattered, tattoos became his faith's anchor. He married a devout wife but still viewed the world through the lens of faith, only to find that his wife had an inappropriate relationship with his best friend. He chose to divorce and return to a carefree, aimless state that seemed selfish. Chris asks Pippa for her opinion, but Pippa only offers perfunctory words of comfort. This greatly annoys Chris, who feels that Pippa is always deceiving herself. Heavy rain pours down as Pippa recalls her life after leaving home. After leaving Teresa's place, Kat's influence still lingers, and Pippa begins to go with the flow, feeling mentally disoriented. Until one day, Pippa learns of her mother's passing. She begins to take medication as frequently as her mother did, like a bound puppet, navigating between different men. Drugs, alcohol, indulgence. Pippa has long lost track of many details, even unable to confirm whether the men around her are her partners. Later, Pippa's partner meets Gigi from a wealthy family. Gigi is passionate about parties and fun, and everyone is invited to Gigi's seaside villa. The villa is situated on a lush green lawn, extremely luxurious, with tall, bright floor-to-ceiling windows, splendid in a way that Pippa has never seen before. In this luxurious setting, Herb's gaze remains fixed on Pippa, viewing her as a delicate and charming doll. At this time, Herb is already Gigi's husband, living a comfortable life relying on his wife's wealth, yet feeling repressed and bored inside. Herb calls Pippa over and asks her when she will start planning her own life. He praises Pippa for her unique beauty and grace, compliments she has never heard before. No one has ever truly cared for her or paid attention to her. In Pippa's eyes, Herb is wise and steady, with slightly graying hair, exuding mature charm. Every word he says captivates her. At that time, Sam also had some exchanges with Pippa, but she found Sam noisy and superficial, far less profound than Herb. Days later, Chris takes the initiative to find Pippa and apologizes for his previous rudeness. Pippa states that her symptoms of sleepwalking have improved. She has sought medical help and is taking medication, and she locks her door to prevent accidents. Yet she still cannot bear to refuse Chris, and is always willing to cooperate and get close to him. For the first time, she longs to share her hometown and her growth with others. Returning to the old place reminds Pippa of her former self. Looking at her daughter Grace, Pippa suddenly feels that she has hindered her daughter's life, becoming a burden to her. Every generation sways in the tide of the times, perhaps heading down the wrong path in the wrong way. Meanwhile, her son Ben resembles his father closely. Chris believes that Pippa is not an unchanging elegance. Grace is also elusive and full of drama like her. Pippa always harbors a wish, longing to have an easy conversation with her mother, sharing about life, children, and each other. Revisiting the old place with Chris is a release, but when facing Herb at home, she always wants to find a topic to discuss, yet feels the atmosphere is strange. Pippa wants to ask Herb if he still loves her, but ultimately hesitates. Pippa often thinks of Gigi, believing that Gigi always exists, constantly reminding her that she must be happy and must love Herb. Herb hurriedly stops Pippa's wild thoughts, reiterating that marriage has nothing to do with Gigi, urging his wife to abandon her guilt mentality and encouraging her to take her medication. These words completely shatter Pippa. She finally understands why her mother often lay in bed silent and dazed for years. Only in this way can one have their own time and preserve beautiful memories. After the party, Pippa sleeps for several days. Upon waking, the person she most wants to see is Herb. The two have their first breakfast date, with Herb laughing at Pippa for wasting time, and Pippa laughing at Herb for being old-fashioned. Gradually, they start dating frequently, and Herb even creates a reading list for Pippa, encouraging her to read more and improve herself. Finally, Herb officially extended an invitation to Pippa, gifting her the most beautiful dress, and they returned once again to that luxurious villa. There, Herb shared his life experiences for the first time. He had once aspired to be a writer, but had achieved little until he gradually found success in the publishing industry. He had gone through marriage and divorce before marrying Gigi from a wealthy family, entering the ranks of the affluent. Herb confessed to Pippa that he admired her intelligence without arrogance, her beauty without vanity, and was particularly drawn to Pippa's melancholic aura. Herb's words completely captivated Pippa. She fell hopelessly in love with him, even though she was only 20 and Herb was already 50. But she dared not reveal her past, only able to maintain their compatibility through her youth and beauty. That passionate encounter made Pippa feel as if Herb had rescued her from darkness, and she feared she was unworthy of him. Herb was convinced that Pippa was his soulmate, believing that Gigi was too crazy, even planning to cheat on Gigi to leave her without guilt. Everything reached a turning point. After Gigi learned of her husband's infidelity, she took the initiative to invite Pippa to lunch. Pippa was extremely resistant. In front of the elegant and beautiful Gigi, her youth and beauty paled in comparison. It wasn't until she witnessed Gigi naturally tidying Herb's clothes that Pippa realized she had to take a stand to keep the man she loved. She longed to possess Herb and was willing to pay any price. At the dining table, a tender suckling pig was placed before Pippa, while a charred cow's head was discarded in the corner. Gigi silently hinted that Pippa's youth was merely a passing novelty for Herb, while she herself was the one who had once been cherished. This was a shift in emotions. Gigi calmly pulled out a handgun, leaving her final words. She stated that men always preferred women who were easy to control, yet ultimately ended up spending their lives with dull individuals, which was truly ironic. The gun was aimed at both Pippa and Gigi herself. With a gunshot, Gigi committed suicide in front of everyone. From that moment on, Pippa's life changed completely. In her relationship with Herb, there would always be the shadow of a deceased person. Pippa believed her presence led to Gigi's death, and to atone for her guilt, she willingly followed Herb. As a penitent, she strived to become the kind of woman Herb adored, transforming into a beautiful and elegant, perfect wife. She no longer abused drugs, no longer smoked, and carefully crafted her image. After having children, Pippa transitioned from being a wife to a mother, embracing her new identity, fully dedicating herself to her family, burying her true self deep within, and presenting a proper image to everyone. A setback in her pottery class made Pippa angrily seek out Herb. Herb had intended to take his wife out to relax, but when Pippa stepped into the new office and picked up a strange towel, Herb realized that everything was beyond repair. The perceptive Pippa opened the bathroom door and discovered a disheveled Sandra hiding in the corner. The secret was exposed, and Herb calmly admitted it. His affair with Sandra began at the start of their move. It was initially a one-night stand, but gradually became inescapable. He did not deeply love Sandra. It was just the thrill of feeling young again. Herb believed that in recent years, Pippa only felt pity for him, caring for him as one would for an elderly person, which made him angry and disgusted. A crisp sound interrupted the argument, as Sandra attempted to end the embarrassment of their affair by committing suicide. The moment she stepped out of the room, Pippa finally understood Gigi's last words while she was alive. For 25 years, she had been atoning for others' expectations, disguising her happiness. At this moment, Pippa shed her heavy burden, and her life welcomed brightness. She no longer needed to bear the heavy guilt, transferring all of it to Sandra. Pippa immediately found Chris with snacks, and confided in him that she was finally no longer needed by anyone. The suppressed emotions erupted completely. Dot happened to witness this scene. Pippa wanted to explain, but Chris was entirely unconcerned about others' gazes. Herb still wanted to defend himself, but Pippa was already indifferent. She was not sad about her husband's infidelity. She felt completely relaxed. Pippa proposed a divorce, But while returning to get something, she found Herb collapsed on the ground. Herb fell into a coma, and Sandra's cries raised Ben's suspicions. Pippa no longer cared about others' feelings and revealed the truth in front of her son. Ben could not understand why his father made such a mistake while his mother remained calm. Only Pippa understood that Herb was merely afraid of aging and death, still treating emotions as a game. Daughter Grace finally arrived. Unexpectedly, Sam confessed his feelings to Pippa at that moment. It turned out that for 25 years, Sam had secretly loved Pippa, believing he finally had a chance. The small social circle hid many unpleasant matters, making Pippa feel deeply disgusted. She was determined not to be that frivolous, submissive puppet anymore. Grace was always puzzled as to why her brother could stay at home and why there were cigarette butts in the car. Herb was diagnosed as brain dead, with only his heartbeat maintaining life signs. Late at night, Grace witnessed her mother smoking. At that moment, she felt her mother was both strange and real. Grace felt guilty. She had often been harsh and yelled at her mother, while her mother remained gentle and forgiving. She apologized to her mother, hoping to become close friends and still have time to understand each other. Her daughter's words filled the void in Pippa's heart. The love she had never received from her mother was compensated for by her daughter. She finally became a qualified mother. At this moment, Chris rushed over upon hearing the news. Chris informed Pippa that he was about to leave and wished to pray for Herb's soul before he departed. He shed his clothes, revealing tattoos symbolizing faith, to accompany Pippa in releasing all her pent-up emotions. At this moment, it has nothing to do with love, only a complete release. Pippa cried out in pain, all her disguises and persistence collapsed, and the past turned to fragments. From this point on, Pippa was reborn, reclaiming her true self. In the continuous light rain, Pippa made her final decision. She chose to perform euthanasia on Herb, looking at the person she loved deeply for half her life, yet not a single tear fell. Pippa silently vowed to always love him, this selfish man. Removing the mask was like tearing apart all the disguises. Herb took away the penitent Pippa, leaving her with a new life in the cherry blossom rain. But her son's girlfriend was pregnant, and just as Pippa found herself, she was about to become a grandmother. In a daze, she stood once again in front of the familiar convenience store. She asked herself, if she shed the confusion and pain, let go of her identities as a wife, mother, and grandmother, and stopped sleepwalking, would anyone be willing to accept the real her? Ben could not accept that his mother no longer cared for him, even unwilling to handle his father's funeral. Unlike his brother's anger and confusion, Grace understood their mother very well. Having worked hard all her life, she deserved to have a brand new life now, worthy of a better life and a soulmate.